For car enthusiasts, radar detectors are an awesome way to save yourself some money. With an average of $41 million per year of tickets issued at an average of $150 a pop, it can really add up. The worst part is your average insurance premium over the course of 3 years for one ticket goes up $900. Quality radar detectors like the Escort Max360 or the Valentine one are expensive. This Escort costs $650, but it works extremely well. Well, recently I purchased this radar detector, a Whistler, for $50 at AutoZone. So let's see how this $50 radar detector stacks up against the big boys. To test out the radars, we have a police radar gun that shoots Ka-band. We're going to do a long distance test to see which radar picks up the actual radar gun first on a straightaway, as well as a long distance test from behind to test the 360-degree protection. Then we're going to do around a corner. If a cop is hiding behind a corner and points the gun at another car, can you detect it? And finally, to measure false alarms, we're going to do a 10-minute loop on the highway to see how many times each radar goes off when you're driving. Before we get started, let's go over some of the features that each manufacturer claims why their detectors are good. So the Escort Max360 has 360-degree protection, so if you get hit from the back or the side. It also has directional arrows that light up to let you know where the signal's coming from, which is really helpful. It's got different tones for X, K, and Ka-band, which is helpful as well. It's also really good at blocking out false alarms, picks up signals from a long distance, has red light cameras, can connect to an app and a user database using your phone. Now, this Whistler Z-11R basically says that it can detect K, X, and Ka-band, and that's about all it says. It claims it can filter out false alarms, but I'm not so convinced. Let's test them out. Here we have Officer James with the radar gun in the 1LE. The test vehicle we're using today is a Range Rover. One, because it has a lot of cigarette lighter adapters, so we can plug in both the radar detectors at the same time. Two, because it's a massive vehicle, so it's an easy target to hit. Now, one plus of the cheap $50 radar detector that I have determined is that when it starts up, it sounds like Mario Party. The first test we're going to be doing is seeing the radar detector's ability to detect a police radar gun from the front. So we're going to be driving up around this curvy road to a straightaway and see which radar detects it first. All right, we are headed up the snake, and there is an officer at the top of the hill, also known as my friend Jamie, with a police radar gun. Let's see which detector goes off first. Whoa. So on test one, the cheap radar detector picked up Ka-band, and the Max360 didn't even register that there was a cop there. That's very interesting. All right, we're gonna try turning around and see how far they can detect from the rear. So I'm gonna be driving away from the signal. We'd pretend a cop is coming up on us, but in order to simulate it a different way, we're gonna be driving away and seeing the distance that it can actually maintain detecting the radar. We're approaching the cop's signal from behind. Let's see when it first registers the signal. All right, so once again, the cheap radar detector went off first, right when we passed the cop, but now it's gone off, versus the Max360 is still detecting. Let's see when it stops. Still going, wow. Still going off. So from the rear, the Max360 has an infinitely farther range. It is still going off at 10 to 20 times farther than the Whistler did, which had a range of about 100 yards from the rear, so not very effective. All right, so we're doing the rear test again. The Escort has already picked up the radar in front. The Whistler has not. Approaching the subject. All right, they both went off at the exact same time. Let's test the rear range again. Both still going off. And the Whistler stopped. And then the Max360 stopped as well. This time, not that much longer range from behind. Flip around and do test number 3 from the front. So far, from the front, the Escort hasn't gone off either time until the last minute, which is completely useless. The range from behind is clearly better from the Escort, but so far, it's a bit of a toss-up on who's winning. Detection from the front again. All right, they both went off at about the same time, both of which were definitely too late, but the Whistler went off first. Still getting rear detection from the Escort, definitely better. Gonna do the rear test one more time and then take it out on the highway for some false alarms. Both went off at about the same time. All right, Escort lasted maybe 25% longer. Well, after the first round of 3 tests from the front and from the rear and around a corner, the Whistler is actually outperforming the Max360. It's got much better frontal detection in this scenario, which is kind of crazy to me. In the rear, it's about 25% less distance, but honestly, approaching a cop from the front is probably more important. Now let's go check out likely the biggest annoyance with cheap radar detectors, and that is false alarms. All right, we are now in a Camaro, which has horrible blind spots, which should make it harder for the detectors to read. Now we're gonna test false alarms to see how often each one of these radar detectors goes off. A big problem with cheaper radar detectors, apparently, now this is a test to figure out whether that's true or not, is that they have a lot of false alarms. And if they go off all the time, you're likely to either turn the radar detector off or just ignore it when it goes off. So let's see how many times each one goes off when we drive for about 10-15 minutes down the road and then on the highway. All right, we got KA band going off on the Whistler unit. Let's see if there is in fact a police officer. Considering there's no police officer in sight and the Escort didn't go off, we're gonna count that as 1 false alarm for the Whistler. While we're waiting for more false alarms, I think I'll talk a little bit about the build quality of each unit. Obviously, the more expensive $650 unit comes in a nice packaging. It comes with a case. The actual suction mount is really good. It doesn't fall off your window, and it's very, very adjustable. The mount on the Whistler is very cheap. It easily falls off. There we go, another false alarm. That's 2 for the Whistler. And it also rattles around quite a bit, which is rather annoying. Passing a sheriff now. Let's see if he uses his radar. Negative. Another KA band on the Whistler. That is 4 false alarms for the Whistler, and the Escort 360, 0. KA band going off again. Stopped again. An interesting thing to note is the false alarms that happen on the Escort, which are pretty rare, tend to be K band and X band, which you can actually filter out. The false alarms are KA band. Anytime KA band goes off on the Escort, you know there's going to be a cop. Now we're at 6 false alarms going off again. Another KA band. We're gonna count that as 7 false alarms. Going off again, going crazy actually. It's flashing X and K and multiple bars. 8 false alarms. A little update as we're stuck in traffic. The Whistler Z-11 is still going off. It's on mute right now, which is nice, but still reading that false alarm. Also, for those concerned about the settings on both radar detectors, the Max360 is set to auto mode. Everything is straight out of the box. Same with the Whistler. So we don't have any special filtering on the Escort other than what comes with the device from the factory. So there's a speed camera up ahead to let you know your speed, which isn't really all that important because in the United States they don't have cameras attached to them. Both of the radars went off at exactly the same time. Let's see which one stops first. Well, the Whistler has already stopped. The rear detection is definitely nowhere near as good as the Max360 is. So there you have it. That's exactly 21 minutes of driving. There was 8 false alarms for the Whistler, 0 for the Passport Max360. So there you have it. The detection power of both the Whistler and the Escort Max360 was honestly about the same. There's better detection from the rear in the Max360, but the kicker is there are way more false alarms on the cheap radar. We had 8 false alarms in a 21-minute drive on the Whistler and 0 on the Max360. Now, this actually did a really good job of detecting radar signals. So if you don't care about false alarms and you're gonna slow down every time KA band goes off, this is really worth 50 bucks. But if you want something that's quiet, sleek, has directional arrows to tell you where the signal's coming from, and is not gonna have false alarms, Max360 is the best detector on the market.